once more. And Camille, as we start the program, I would like to continue the conversation of which Karen, yourself, and I actually was our last topic yesterday, and that is in relation to police killings across TNT. Now, there is another story, obviously, that most of us have become aware of since yesterday, but due to the show yesterday and due to the timing of the release, today we can discuss it. And this is in relation to Richard Marcel, also known as Snake. Now, he was actually known for being the individual that splashed water on then Member of Parliament for that constituency, and that is for Cheryl Hines in 2018. That is what he's remembered for. But his relatives have actually described him as a misunderstood fighter for the community. The 35-year-old father of one who was shot several times by police during alleged confrontation at about 10 p.m. on Tuesday. The police claim they were fired upon, but relatives and residents are actually disputing this. Again, it's a story that has become something that, the same old story when it comes to police shootings across Trinidad, and yet we never have any sort of evidence of the police. Surely if they were shot at, we would have some evidence, body cam footage from the area, bullet shells on the ground, bullet shells on the vehicle, something. Never anything.
Yeah, that's always the case, and it's certainly the case in this instance, based on not just what the residents of the community have stated, but also based on the TTPS release. They themselves have stated that they were fired upon, but the persons from within the constituency are saying something else. And as you mentioned, it's something that we don't ever really hear or be able to see the outcome of in terms of whether or not the police were actually fired upon, or whether it was a case of otherwise.
Because the Port of Spain task force, who were on patrol at the time in Beetham Gardens, said they were in an unmarked police car. They said they were shot at and returned fire. So I'm just trying to figure out that they're in an unmarked police vehicle, they're shot at, they returned fire. Now, whilst that story is not completely unbelievable, because what we also are aware of in Trinidad is that if you're in a car that is not known to the area of the community, immediately you become suspicious.
Yes, certainly.
So there's a warning: don't drive in this area, don't drive in that area.
Especially in a community like that, you would see it, and you would say they themselves would have become suspicious, because one of the residents did say that on camera. He said they were there and they became suspicious of the vehicle that they were seen in the area, which is not a vehicle that's known to them, and it's not a community that. It's the sad reality is that it's not a community that you will just pick up yourself and say, I'm going today. Not that I'm trying to say anything against the community, but that's just a fact.
But then what also goes into this, Camille, is again another police killing, and what we're hearing this time from the Emancipation Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, and not only them, from also residents of the area, is to stop targeting young black men from these communities that are vulnerable.
Yes, in fact, the Emancipation Support Committee, they came out, I think not just based on the shooting, but based on other instances in the past, and they have stated that here's what they called on the Port of Spain Task Force. They didn't say the TTPS, they said the Port of Spain Task Force to stop killing young black men in the Port of Spain division. Because based on, if you look at some of the police shootings within recent times, a lot have been within this division and Western division as well. So the Port of Spain Divisional Task Force will have responsibility for Port of Spain.
Yeah, but do you think that young black men in these vulnerable communities, do you think that they are intentionally targeted by, if we want to actually round it off to the Port of Spain Task Force, which is generally by the TTPS, do you think that they are intentionally targeted?
In many instances, yes, and we have seen people actually been charged with stuff like that in the past. I mean, they would say, we're not innocent until proven guilty, but just based on the evidence that we have seen with past instances, it's clear that there's a target on some people, and many people would probably shy away from saying it, but I would say yes.
But then, Camille, what you're alluding to, and what you've just stated, is also the opinion of many others. What you're alluding to is that within the service, there are hit squads.
I wouldn't doubt it.
That, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it myself, but the mere fact that we come to this conclusion, it's scary that the services that are there to protect and serve are also the ones that will take you out in an instant if it's called for.
And that's it, and we saw it with the three young men that died. I think that was probably back in June or something, outside of Republic Bank in Port of Spain, and that we still haven't gotten any word on that as of lately in relation to how that investigation is progressing. I mean, the commissioner at that time said that they are not willing to release the footage that they have from the area, but it's still similar instances, similar talk that we're hearing, and these shootings continue to be concentrated to specific areas, and we don't really get anything from it.
So then the obvious question, my friend, is who the ones that are calling these hits? And we can make assumptions on this program, and you know, we also have to be very careful what we state.
Yeah.
But whatever assumption you make, we have to get to the bottom of who are the ones that are calling for these hits.
And that's probably something that we may never know in all truth and honesty, but it's certainly something that people can't conclude just based on what we've seen in the past, and especially within recent times.
Mm-hmm. Because in my mind, it's going all around, and I'm just thinking to myself, listen, we know that there's interference from governments past and present in the TTPS. Could that be a part of the problem? You know, we know that if you're a businessman and you pay off police officers, they'll do what you want. That is also an issue. The other issue apart from the TTPS is also the regiment. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service actually confiscated 3 pistols and charged 3 men a couple of days ago, one of them being a soldier. Again, a story that is not new to us.
Well, that's what I was about to say, because we've seen instances, not just the one that you mentioned, but in very, very recent times, and in the last couple of years, you've seen more and more soldiers being charged, more and more service people being charged on the whole. I mean, people from the regiment, people from the defense force, people from the Coast Guard that are involved in certain illegal activities. We're seeing that more and more.
So then that is why I actually asked our media ambassador on the program a couple weeks ago whether or not we actually have to be very much more careful and do greater background checks before not only allowing these individuals to enter the service, but also whilst they're in the service. Because just recently, I think, was it on Sunday, right, or sometime last week, I'm getting my dates a bit confused, that they found at a killing in Morva bullets that belonged to the regiment.
Yes. Right?
A caller from San Fernando on this program commented on it a couple of days ago. And on that instance, still, it's just a story that was in the papers. It's a story that made news, and that was it. It's just part of the news cycle, and nothing else happens.
And it's not the first time that we've heard of things like this, as I was mentioning when the caller called in. And the thing about it is that these bullets are marked, these shells are marked, and so they know where it belongs to, hence they were able to say, here's what, this is from the regiment, or wherever they said it was from. And so they should be able to trace back which weapon this came from, when this person was dispatched with this particular weapon, who had how many rounds of weapon, whatever is the case. It's marked for a reason.
There needs to be a stringent, robust approach. It needs to be thorough. It needs to be comprehensive when it is that they're analyzing members of the services, the various arms of national security. Because clearly now it's obvious that they are part of the problem as well. Maybe what I'm stating, you the viewer might have known it for quite some time. But the mere fact that we've had case upon case upon case and nothing is ever done about it, nothing further apart from it being a headline in the news cycles, then clearly, guess what? They don't mind it remaining that way. They don't mind it being that way. There's obviously been no effort to clean up the services. And regardless of if the TTPS tells me, well, as you can see, we've charged our own. I know most of the times when they charge their own, it's because of instructions from the Police Service Commission. You know, so you can't tell me that there's been an approach to actually remove corruption from the TTPS if we still have hit squads. The regiment, as you mentioned, the Coast Guard as well, because how are these boats coming in at night, passing through Carney? You hear them. People have told me that they hear them.
In fact, the Minister of National Security on Tuesday night at the PNM's meeting, he said that their radar system is up and working, so I don't understand why they are failing and why boats continue to come into the country with illegal weapons. These weapons aren't being manufactured here, and it's nothing that we don't know. This is nothing new to Trinidad and Tobago. It's talk that we've heard over the years. It's things that we continue to speak about. But it's a matter of, whilst you are saying that your radar system is working, whilst you mentioned that you bought new Coast Guard vessels last year, 2 from Australia and whatever else, whilst you are saying that you are attempting to get to those that are not functioning right now to a state of functionality, but you're still having issues where illegal weapons continue to come, illegal weapons and drugs and ammunition continue to come into the country.
Listen, Kimmy, you can spend the best amount of money that you have on the best modern technology, best equipment, whatever it may be. You can spend that money. If you don't know how to use it to its purpose effectively, or how it can assist you most appropriately, then what's the point?
Yeah, that's it. And we can just spend money over the years on issues. In fact, Fitzgerald Hines alluded to the OPVs even on Tuesday night, so it's still something that they are speaking about. That's why I said they had nothing new in that meeting. And we can just speak out all these things, but if, as you mentioned, if we aren't using them correctly, then what's the purpose of having it? And so we continue to speak out all these issues over the that we already know. And I can almost hear the caller saying, that particular caller from Arima talking about the ports and the ports and the ports, and he's correct, because it's an instance, it's an issue where you see guns and ammunition and drugs coming in via our legal ports of entry, and somebody would have shipped that container or whatever here. Somebody has to receive that here. You can't tell me that no one shipped that particular container, that you have no sort of manifest to see where this came from. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. You can't tell me your declaration and your manifest is
Correct.
unaware to those who have brought it in. Before it even leaves a port, that needs to be detailed. And when you're receiving it, before it's even given clearance, all that needs to be checked. You're right. So if the acting commissioner of police could come and tell me, could come and tell you and the public that we know it's coming in through the legal ports. Because they have illegal ports of entry, there's illegal ports. We know it's coming in through the legal ports. If the Minister of National Security, for at least within the last couple of years, he's mentioned our borders are porous, and yet he comes on and he speaks in this great tone as though he's actually doing something about it. Clearly, Kemuel, probably stating the obvious again, they like it so. They want it to be that way. Because to me, it's obvious.
Somebody benefits.
Exactly. But who are the people that are benefiting? Perhaps the people who are leaving it to be that way. Right? I don't even have to call names for us to understand exactly what I just said.
People know exactly what you mean.
Folks, let's take a break here on the program now. And when we return, well, we'll welcome our guest this morning as we take a look at I guess you can call it, some form of gratuity for the work done by healthcare workers over the last 3 years at the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be right back after this.
Hazel?
Parents need to know what they're signing up the children for.
Mommy, Daddy, I just wanted to ask. God, is that you?
You want to do what?
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law.
and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing nowadays.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Well, the Prime Minister at a meeting on Tuesday night in Belmont mentioned that he's going to instruct the Minister of Finance to allocate monies towards, a form of gratuity to healthcare workers over the last 3 years who've been on the front line in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, that is all well and good. I must admit, I think people do actually deserve some form of, the best way to put it is appreciation for their dedication and their hard work. And I, for one, support this. However, what you also have to take a look at it from a couple other angles. One, this money is being allocated. It's a one-off payment. That's excellent. There's still nurses who have not been made permanent, who are on contracts, from what I understand, every 3 to 6 months in some instances. You also have a situation where student nurses, and I'm also wondering if they are going to be a part of the healthcare workers to receive monies as part of gratuity. These student nurses had to work as well while studying. It's part of their curriculum, but in the midst of COVID-19, they came on full time, even though they weren't fully qualified.
And you're absolutely correct in that. I mean, it was long in coming, well deserved just based on the effort that the healthcare workers would have done for us, for Trinidad and Tobago, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the height of the pandemic. Because let's make it very clear that we're not out of the woods yet by way of our COVID cases. In fact, not a straight discussion, but just yesterday, the principal medical officer of health would have stated that they've seen a 400% jump in the last 2 weeks in the amount of deaths that they're seeing from COVID. So certainly it's for us to take caution to that. But in relation to the payment that the healthcare workers are to receive, whenever that is, or the monies that the Prime Minister has requested that the Minister of Health make available, it's certainly left to see how it will be done, in what manner, whether it will be money that they will be receiving, or bonds, or whatever form of gratuity that they will be receiving.
Now, we're assuming that nurses are part of this entire, what can I say, special payment.
Well, that's the other thing, and you and I were debating that whether or not he meant, because what he said is health, the Ministry of Health workers, but you and I were looking at the fact that RHAs are under the Ministry of Health, but they do their own hiring. In terms of the Ministry of Health would hire their workers, but the RHAs would hire their workers separately. So it's left to see if it's that they'll be allocating the money to the Ministry of Health, who will then disperse it to the different RHAs for it to reach to the nurses.
Now, I've been told, and I could not actually verify the expenses of the RHAs, but I do know that the RHAs received money that was outside of their budgeted expenses over the last few years as part of hiring staff when necessary for COVID-19. What I was told by quite a few doctors, again, I couldn't verify the expenses, is that in particular, one RHA was given that money, and they were actually at times struggling to receive the necessary medical equipment such as face masks and gloves. So they were questioning, where did those expenses go to? 2, no new staff were hired. Nurses, no doctors, none of them were actually hired. In fact, at the height of the pandemic, if we are to go back, I think it was the NCRHA that wrote a letter to nurses indicating that the monies that they usually receive as an allowance for their uniform and shoes, well, at this point in time, we can't actually afford it.
Yeah, because it essentially had to be redirected. And you're absolutely correct, because I recall looking at the Ministry of Health's updates sometime last year, probably earlier in the year, when things started to ramp up by way of our COVID cases. And they would have mentioned, the Minister of Health would have mentioned that they would have made this amount of money, these amount of millions available to NCRH. I think, if I am not mistaken, NCRH actually received the most because they were the region that, the RHA region that really dealt with most of the cases by way of the amount of hospitals. So I know for a fact that they did receive money, but where that money went is left to be seen.
The Prime Minister has indicated, and again, not trying to move too much away from the topic, but it ties in actually, that he understands the level of anger in the population for the state of our roads, the conditions of our roads. And he says, well, over the last couple of years, that money was actually allocated towards health. I think the Prime Minister was very much misleading.
Very much.
I'm saying it openly. He was, because I, for one, I know this for a fact, that the money that Trinidad and Tobago received, and most of the money in terms of financing our fight against COVID-19, came from donations and loans. That is where we got the majority of our funding over the last few years. So for the Prime Minister to make such a statement is very much misleading. So if all that money was allocated towards the Ministry of Health, towards the fight against COVID-19, where did all that money go to if these RHAs didn't hire new staff?
I think that's what the opposition would have been calling on the government to state since last year. Because if you recall, there would have been not just monies from outside entities, they would have received money from places like CAF and those other developmental banks within the region and outside of the region, just for countries who are part or who form part of entities like this. And so we would have received money in the fight against COVID. We would have received money to purchase vaccines and all of that. And so I know for a fact that they received money. So the Prime Minister coming out on Tuesday night and saying, here's what the money that we used to assist or to help fight COVID over the last 2 years, that's the money that we would have used to fix our roads. And I don't buy that at all. Because monies are allocated, so you allocate monies accordingly. So you allocate money for health, you allocate money to the Ministry of Works and Transport. So that is just attempting to appease us, and I really can't support what he's saying.
I do not support what he's stating at all. I have a list of loans, of donations, of grants that Trinidad and Tobago would have received over the last few years, many of which were allocated directly to various ministries, most being the Ministry of Health, and in one instance, the Ministry of Education, to actually allow for the purchase of devices for students who were at home over the last couple of years. So the Prime Minister was very much misleading in his statements. Back to the entire thing about a special payment to healthcare workers. Whilst we can debate whether or not those who are hired by the RHAs are indeed going to be the ones to receive the money versus Ministry of Health workers, maybe on the part of the Prime Minister, as his speech, maybe he was making a general statement. But you can't take it for granted, because let us say that RHA staff, such as nurses and doctors, do not receive money. The Prime Minister will come out and say, well, I never said that. I said Ministry of Health workers.
And that's it, and we've had instances like that in the past, where it's probably an error. So maybe it's something that he needs to come out and correct. Because
just as how he corrected the budget.
Correct. He needs to probably come out and correct it, because what he said is healthcare workers, and as I mentioned, you and I were debating whether or not that, well, our Ministry of Health workers, sorry, and that's what we were debating, whether or not it's that the Ministry of Health is going to disburse these monies to the RHAs, or are they going to receive, or are the workers of the Ministry of Health itself going to receive that money? Who is really receiving the money? Because I do think, even apart from that, I do think that the healthcare workers are very much deserving of some form of gratuity based on their service over the last 2 years.
Well, according to Eddie Stewart, who is the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association, he says he's grateful for the offering by the Prime Minister. But back in 2020, at the Prime Minister's residence, Dr. Keith Rowley made a similar promise, and in 2021, they also noted that he would have made a similar promise, both of which never materialized. So he's actually hoping that at this instance it materializes. He's brought up the issue of the nursing students as well. Over the last couple of weeks, you would have seen nursing students across the country protesting because they have not received their stipend. Their stipend, by the way, is, how do I describe it, boy? It's so poor and so low for a nursing student, especially considering what they have to go through. Bear in mind they're students, but it's as though they're full-time workers. If I'm not mistaken, it's something $1,500 a month. That's absolutely ridiculous.
In this time, in this day and age.
Exactly. And Eddie Stewart made a very good argument on another station as to why that was so low. It ties back in now. A one-time special payment, which is gratuity. By the way, doctors who are employed at these public hospitals receive gratuities at the end of every year and at the end of their contracts. They do. Right, so this may not be anything new for them in particular, but still, they've worked hard. Doctors actually working 24-hour shifts every other day. That's what it came to, 24-hour shifts. You go home and you sleep for 12 hours, you come out the next day, work for 12 hours, go home and sleep, then you're on a 24 shift again.
Nurses as well, because
yes.
When there was a state of emergency and the curfew hours, I remember my mom was a nurse, so they had to change the hours in terms of how they work. So I know for a fact that it's just that they are overworked and they do deserve some form of...
And burnout is real. Burnout is real. Putting this aside, how are the unions going to interpret this? How are the unions going to interpret this, considering that they're still in the midst of wage negotiations?
Well, that's another thing, and it's something that's certainly worth exploring, because the Prime Minister, or the CPO rather, has come out and said, here's what we don't have anything, we can't offer any more money. 4% is our cap right now. The associations have made a counter proposals in terms of, okay, you're saying 4% is your cap, but maybe there are other areas that you can look at in terms of giving us certain things to bolster that 4%. And now what we have is that they are saying, here's what we're going to give our Ministry of Health workers some form of gratuity, and you all have previously stated that you all don't have the money. So what is it?
Mm-hmm. Well, joining us right now, we just have about 5 minutes with him, but we're grateful for the time that he's still given to us this morning, is the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Registered Nurses Association, Mr. Eddie Stewart. Good morning, Mr. Stewart. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Pleasant good morning to you and your listeners. Thanks for having me.
Well, Mr. Stewart, you stated that such a payment is long overdue, but this time you hope it materializes because similar promises were made in 2020 and in 2021. Tying that back into what you would have been mentioning over the last couple of weeks with nursing students, as well as wage negotiations, is this some form of reprieve? In a way, he's calling it gratuity, the Prime Minister, but is it also some form of subduing the voice of the TTRNA, considering their fights over the last couple of weeks?
We are not sure what to make of it, but substantially it is a promise that would have been made 2 years ago to the association at the Prime Minister's office, that he would recognize the work of nursing and midwifery personnel, particularly over the pandemic. So whatever is irrational, I mean, we are thankful for it. Every cent counts. It's tough economic times for all persons, nursing and midwifery personnel included. However, there are more substantive issues that we really would like to see within the upcoming budget and be scripted within the budget and not be an afterthought or at the whims and fancies of someone, but actually be properly thought out and scripted into the budget. And you highlighted some of those, ensuring nursing students get their stipend on time, and not only for one school, but all of the 4 nursing schools. outstanding increments that hasn't been paid in excess of 3, 4, 5 years, outstanding gratuity payments, making nursing personnel permanently employed. That's a promise they made on Hansard, on record, exactly 1 year ago. And now a recent judgment has solidified our claim for nursing personnel to be made permanent, where the court agreed with the association that it was really unethical and against proper industrial relations to have persons who really filling permanent positions, but you are just keeping them on these temporary, continuous contracts, denying them gratuity, denying them pension. So when nurses retire, 3,400 nurses, when they retire, they have nothing to get upon retirement. I mean, really unfair, really it doesn't. No other service, no, not the police, not prisons, not fire, no other service is placed in this predicament. So whatever is the rationale, we would take it, but that would not dull our voices and our cries for being treated on parity. Yeah.
So, Mr. Stewart, based on what you have said there, and also based on how you linked it to what the Prime Minister said, what you're calling for is a more well thought out process in terms of what the healthcare workers, not just nurses, but healthcare workers on the whole, would receive.
Yes, definitely. But we focus exclusively on nursing and midwifery personnel. We are thankful that our other colleagues in the multidisciplinary team would also be compensated. All persons worked very hard during that pandemic, but one who could understand that same person that the Prime Minister spoke about, that would be on their bed and interacting with healthcare workers. The only healthcare worker that person was seen on a 24/7 basis would have been nurses. All other categories of staff, barring none, may just come in and leave. But the person who would be there 24/7 with those patients are really nursing personnel. And over the years, nursing personnel would have been really shortchanged, and we have really fallen behind the pendulum against other professions, against the doctors, against the pharmacists, against every other category. We work alongside. So much so, their salary almost doubles that of the nurse. So this is why it's really a more comprehensive discussion needs to take place with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Finance, to really bring nurses up to parity. And ironically, nursing personnel is the one profession out of all of those that have job opportunities abroad. So we're unsure if it's a deliberate attempt just to get people out of the system and use it just as short-term employment for persons within our population, and encourage them to leave by offering them these substandard contracts. But one could understand the implications to our healthcare if this is allowed to continue. Every week, we hear our colleagues leaving. Every week, the recruiters come down. Canada, New York, USA, England. Every week, they are taking up the best and brightest nursing personnel to fill their shortage in their territories. So we hope a much more robust, well thought out plan. We have a number of proposals that don't even cost the government a single cent. And we would hope they at least complete those promises already made to us, and those requests we are making of them that don't even cost the government much to fulfill.
Well, Mr. Stewart, you just mentioned that there are those nurses who are seeking other opportunities abroad, maybe because of working conditions and maybe because of their remuneration that they would receive. That being said, a couple questions from that. One, is there a great exodus of nurses taking place? And two, is there a shortage of nurses here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, on both accounts, yes, there is a continuous exodus. To give a perspective to the listening public, how grave it is. These countries abroad, England, USA, what have you, before they used to take senior nursing personnel, they used to take those you must have worked within your healthcare system in excess of 2-3 years. You must have worked more than that. So they would take the 5 years, the 10 years, what have you. Now they are taking junior nurses. Now they are taking junior nurses and they say, here, what, just come up, you'll get the experience up there. That never used to happen before. So yes, they are definitely taking up a lot of nurses. And then secondly, the shortage, there's a clear shortage. Just mere fact, and it really has been highlighted by the Ministry of Health themselves, by the RHAs themselves, about the shortage of nursing personnel, because they are unable to retain some of these human resource within the health system, who they have hired at the Cuba multi-training facility, at Point 14 Hospital. All of those persons who were hired during the COVID pandemic, some of them are being let go as we speak because they're saying they don't have funds to keep them employed. So that is the situation we are facing. So one would have thought governments, successive governments, building these permanent institutions, not realizing that you would need staff to run these permanent institutions, but they cannot even continue with the staff that they have currently working with there, because they're saying that this was really a short-term measure just for the COVID, just for the parallel healthcare system to function. Now COVID is winding down, we are sending you all home. So it demonstrates we have a serious glut, and we see it on a daily basis. Some RHAs where some wards where you really supposed to have 1 nurse to 4 or 5 patients, you have 1 nurse to 20 patients. So, and it trickles down to, and it impacts negatively on the quality of care of patients. So yeah, so on both accounts, nurses are leaving in their numbers, both senior and junior, and definitely we have a shortage of nursing personnel, but specifically, we have a shortage of specialist trained nursing personnel. The oncology nurse, the ICU nurse, the HCU nurse, the dialysis nurse, we have a severe shortage. Midwives, we have a shortage of. So we have a higher shortage in those particular specialty areas.
Sure. So what would a payment or some form of gratuity look like in the eyes of you as head of the association? What are the nurses calling for?
Well, as I said, the main thing is just to pay us what we are owed, because we would not want a situation where the government said, when it's time to pay what is owed, what we actually work for, the government said, but we just gave you a $500 the other day, you should be contented with that. So we would want to make sure what is owed is paid. Secondly, in terms of the type of remuneration, the one-off payments, what other countries would have done, including in the Caribbean, was give persons a whole month's salary additional. So that is something that we would have seen being done in other territories, and that would be something that the association and nursing personnel would be comfortable with. If you come to give nursing personnel $200 or $300, I mean, especially don't give them anything, that would really be insulting. So I hope the government thinks about this. It seems to be something that has not started, the conversation probably has not started, because when you heard the Prime Minister's statement, he said he has not told or informed the Finance Minister, and budget day is probably just a few weeks away. The Prime Minister doesn't even know about this. So the Prime Minister is now going to instruct him to find resources to do this. So obviously it's not well thought out. So we hope it's not something that will further infuriate nursing and midwifery personnel. That is something we really don't need at this point in time. It may be that he best have not said anything than to come and give nursing personnel $200, $300, or healthcare workers for that. But that may spur an outrage which is not really in the best interest of our patients. Yeah.
Mr. Stewart, we have 1 minute. Very quickly, I know there were issues associated with allowances over the pandemic when it came to nursing uniforms and even the shoes that they wear. Has that been sorted out, or is there still issues in receiving that allowance?
It varies from RHA to RHA. Some RHAs are on the ball in ensuring they keep their commitments according to past collective agreements, because persons must remind that these are 2013 salaries we are still working on. So it varies from RHA to RHA. Some are much more delinquent, some are much more on their game. But the past allowances for uniform has been paid, a very minuscule amount by any stretch of the imagination compared to other groups which they are actually provided with a uniform. Nursing personnel actually have to make their own uniform, and they are supposed to be given the cloth. The cloth is also another issue. So there's a number of issues. As I said, we really need to review how the ministry, how the RHAs are funded, what they spend their money on, and really rethink and retool to really make this whole RHA system run as how it was intended when there was health sector reform was on the agenda. One of the major components of health sector reform was health financing. That whole aspect has not been treated with to date. All we have done so far is decentralize, broke up the Ministry of Health into these 5 regional health authorities, but all of the other components dealing with quality, dealing with accreditation, dealing with financing, technology, human resource management, none of those additional components have been put in place.
Well, Mr. Stewart, I have to cut you there. I do apologize, but thank you very much for your time this morning. Well, keep well, all the very best.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Folks, we'll take a quick break here on the program, and when we return, we'll continue the discussions this morning. Stay tuned to Talking Point.
Delivered nationwide. Kiss enriched bread.
Fill your day with love.
Hey, sir.
Parents need to know what they're signing up the children for.
Mommy, Daddy, I just wanted to ask. God, is that you?
You want to do what?
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Multiple sclerosis is a chronic inflammatory condition affecting the central nervous system.
Being with someone who has MS, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of faith.
It's difficult to diagnose until I was even in Mount Hope Hospital for about 3 weeks.
See, when sitting here, all of a sudden you'll feel like somebody trying to pound some needles or a nail under your foot. That is
Unfortunately, there is no cure for MS at this point in time.
MS creeps upon you. So I had one attack, and by 4 years after that, I had the second attack, and then they said yes to MS.
Minutes before the hour of 9 o'clock. With us now on the phone line is the Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress, Dr. Kirk Mayhew. Good morning, Dr. Mayhew.
Good morning. Good morning to you and your viewers.
Well, Dr. Mayhew, I do apologize for the time. Sometimes on television, that is exactly what happens. But thank you very much for staying with us nonetheless. The Prime Minister on Tuesday night, he mentioned many things. In particular, he went after the opposition with regards to the opposition leader's lack of reprimanding Senator Anna Roberts for what he deems as an attack on his wife and his family. What is the UNC's response to this?
Well, the leader has responded that she's just basically staying out of that. But Anna Roberts had a very direct response, which was to sue him if he's wrong. And the Prime Minister, quite interesting, he was very irate, he was very angry, but he did not deny anything. He has not sued for defamation, he has not sued for libel. He's a man that's quick to go to court, but apparently he hasn't been quick on this. But the real issue is his unfitness for office, which is absolutely apparent in his last display, in every display really, but it was so apparent last time. And that whole appearance was just one huge excuse for why they are failing and trying to beg people to say, listen, I know we failed in crime and we failed in energy and we failed in the economy, but look at all the things we're doing and please give us an A for effort. And it's the UNC's fault, and all sorts of things, just excuse after excuse, and he's totally unhinged.
But Dr. Mayhew, that's beside the fact. The point on why the opposition leader did not reprimand Senator Anna Roberts. It's a matter of if that was said, if the same was said about the opposition leader's husband, then I'm sure the UNC would have come out and categorically denied.
No, Anna Roberts did not say anything about the Prime Minister's wife. In fact, he's been very supportive of her because the Prime Minister is an extremely crude and gross and vulgar person. Flirting with journalists on air. With all his disgusting remarks about women and so forth, there was absolutely no attack. I mean, what the PNM are trying to do is spin it around into an attack on Sharon Brown, but there has been absolutely none. We've actually been very supportive of her.
So in a sense, it's that the opposition leader, although she has said that she's staying far from it, she's basically condoning the attack that was made by Senator Anna Roberts. Let's be real here.
Well, she hasn't. She has not come out to condemn it, and basically she's concentrating on the main issues of the failed economy, the failed crime, national security situation, the collapsed healthcare system. The country's in a total crisis.
Dr. Mayhew, that's actually a very good point you made in relation to the country being in a crisis. The Prime Minister mentioned this in relation to national security, in relation to the roads. I think that's an excellent point you make. With that, shouldn't it be more that the opposition concentrates and focuses on those points that you would have just mentioned, rather than going down this road of what we can only deem as gutter politics? We don't need to bring family members, because I mentioned it yesterday on the program. If the sides were switched, You know, you don't want to bring the opposition leader's family into this. You don't want to bring your family into this. Neither does the Prime Minister bringing his family into it. So, very good points in relation to what's taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. And as PRO, don't you think that the party should focus more on that rather than having its senators or members of its opposition actually going down this road of politics that Trinidad and Tobago just doesn't need right now?
Well, that's what the party has been doing on our press conference yesterday, our Sunday presses, which the Prime Minister refers to as obviously a big viewer of our Sunday press conferences, our Monday night forums, and so forth. That this is precisely what we do focus on. Now, Arnold Roberts has his Doga Politics show, and he does his issues and whatever he raises there. But as a party, the party concentrates in its various fora, in its various press releases and so forth, on the issues that are facing this nation, and which the Prime Minister continues to dismiss. I mean, actually, the Prime Minister would probably love to concentrate on this more, so he doesn't have to answer all the other questions.
Dr. Behu, you know, I appreciate your time, but it's a bit ironic because, you know, you've come on the station before, and I enjoy having you on the station because you've always been open to conversation, and I must commend you for that. But just in the same instance that you mentioned that the Prime Minister was trying to distract or turn around the actual thing, I mean, you've done a very good job at that this morning when we were asking you questions in relation to the opposition leader and Senator Anna Roberts. So, I mean, as much as you are condemning the Prime Minister for his particular stance or approach to things, which I do understand and I agree with on your part, unfortunately, you've just basically done the same thing this morning.
Well, I mean, I just stated the fact that, I mean, it is a fact that the opposition leader has just sort of said she's not getting involved in that, and she continues to go on the serious issues facing the country, and that's what she always talks about. That's what she only talks about, and you know, and she has made it very clear that she is not going to get involved in that, and she hasn't.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Mayhew, I have to thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning. The opposition leader said she's not going to get involved in that. I can only say that, okay, that's good from the aspect that concentrate on the real issues, focus on the real issues, as you mentioned, that the party is doing, and hopefully an instance like this doesn't happen again. Because Trinidad and Tobago doesn't need this. You're an intelligent man, you know, you're a political scientist, and I know your job isn't entirely easy, there's a lot to do, but all the very best, and we welcome you to the program again in the future.
Well, thank you very much, and have a good day.
You too, sir. All the best. Folks, WESN now breaks for news on the hour, and when we return, well, we'll open up the phone lines this morning. Stay tuned.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marky Sakers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Trinidad and Tobago Scrap Iron Dealers Association hails protest a success. National Security Minister says protesting is a healthy part of democracy. 3 men arrested with firearms shortly after armed robbery in Debe. And internationally, Russian strike kills 22. Now for the details. The Scrap Iron Dealers Association has hailed yesterday's peaceful protest against the government's 6-month ban on the exportation of scrap metals a success. Several union heads joined the TTSIDA for their protest.
His attack on this industry is an attack on women and children. And we call on them this morning to revisit this decision. Revisit this decision to allow for peace to prevail, to allow for these law-abiding citizens to continue to earn a living.
It is projected that the scrap industry is going to rise to $670 billion globally by 2027, rising from $411 billion last year.
While National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines commended on the movement for their acts of democracy and thanked them for protesting within the remit of the law. The scrap iron dealers were initially supposed to end their protest in Port of Spain, but were not granted permission, thus ending in Aranjuez.
Understands and appreciate that, as indeed the government and all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago do. There are some laws and some regulations. You make an application to the Commissioner of Police, and once the Commissioner of Police in his professional wisdom settles on it, I'm quite happy with it.
Quick work by officers of the Southern Division resulted in the arrest of 3 suspects and the seizure of a firearm following an armed robbery incident in Debe District on Monday afternoon. A supermarket owner reported to police that he was conducting business at his Debe establishment around 5:45 p.m. on Monday, when a male gunman entered and announced a holdup. The victim claims the gunman relieved him and 2 other persons of a quantity of cash and a cellular phone before making his escape. Officers of the Southern Division Task Force, the Highway and Patrol Branch South, and the Barakpur Police Station responded to reports and conducted extensive searches in the area for the suspect, who was found and apprehended. In international news, a Russian rocket strike on a Ukrainian train station has killed 22 people, Ukraine says, on the day marking 6 months since Moscow's invasion began. It says 5 of the victims of the attack in the eastern town of Chaplin burned to death in a vehicle. An 11-year-old boy also was killed. President Vladimir Zelensky announced the strike in the middle of the UN Security Council meeting. He said about 50 people were injured. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Marky Sekas. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. Thank you very much for staying with us. Well, this morning, Camille and I had a conversation in relation to whether or not the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is intentionally targeting young black men from vulnerable communities. This is something that the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago has put forward, asking the police to stop their actions. So share with us your opinion on that. Also, we had the president of the Registered Nurses Association, Mr. Eddie Stewart, to speak on what we can deem as gratuity for the frontline healthcare workers over the last 3 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. And finally, we spoke to Dr. Kirk Mayhew, and we're thankful because Dr. Mayhew actually, very last minute, I called him this morning, and he agreed to come on the program, and he made time. Thank you very much to Dr. Mayhew. But he spoke in relation to the Prime Minister's, I guess you can put it, slamming the opposition leader for her inactions in condemning Anna Roberts for his words that were aimed at the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's wife. So, a lot to talk about this morning. The phone lines are open. If there's anything that you'd like to contribute to Talking Point, feel free to do so. The numbers are on your screen. Camille, according to Dr. Mayhew, the opposition leader has decided to stay away from this.
You see, and that's what I don't like, because it's a case where he was speaking about, well, the senator has spoken about a female, and that female being the Prime Minister's wife. Now, I understand that people will say, and some viewers may say, well, the Prime Minister, and that's what Dr. Mayhew did this morning, he said, well, the Prime Minister said things like this in the past, but have we condemned the Prime Minister for it? Yes, absolutely. And the thing about it is that if our motive, or not our motive, but if that's what we do in instances like that, we point fingers or we say, well, you did it, so what does that mean? That it's okay for us to do it as well? No, that's not the type of politics that we should be looking at or mirroring here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Because you're absolutely right. You see, I don't like the fact that Anna Roberts came out and made these statements, and then the opposition leader didn't state anything. I think you mentioned that on Monday night.
Not only that, not just at this Monday night, but last week Monday as well. And if I'm not mistaken, last week Monday as well, there was the issue of other members of the UNC at the Monday night forum
taking the same approach
very easily into their contributions.
And I don't like the fact that when the Prime Minister calls you out, because again, if we are to be fair, the Prime Minister and the People's National Movement have also made some ridiculous, nasty comments and statements about the opposition and about other members of the public who've been a part of public service. So this is not something that we're seeing from the UNC alone. But if you're going to condemn the Prime Minister for such, at the same time, you can't be practicing the same. You know, it makes your messaging of unity, of a united national Congress, completely obsolete. Furthermore, as soon as he calls you out, you decide to back off. That's shameful, you know. And I mean, in this particular instance, with the Prime Minister's comments towards the opposition leader, I can't blame him entirely. However, what he said about I can take on, I'm not sending nobody to kill anybody, I want to know where that came from, you know. But we have a call on the line with us from Arima. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
I would like you all to do me a little favor, because I'm home on vacation and I'm resting, and I like the program in the morning. But you see, if you have people who really ain't had nothing to contribute, do interview them now. This Dr. Kirkmago, give me a Maggie for me. Because right now in the history of this country, we are at the worst. We are in need of direction. We need our plans going forward. Look at the areas, right? One, laws, crime, and justice. That is our problem. Two, the environment and renewable energy. That is our problem. Land use and agriculture. That is our problem. Immigration and border control. That is our problem. The quality of life that our citizens, we have a high standard of living, but the quality of life is, and presented no kind of solutions. And personally, you know, for the opposition leader to wash her hands when a woman is being disrespected, and she is a champion of women's rights and children's rights, I tell you, no PhD in the word intelligence, gentlemen. No PhD in common sense. So these people who, I don't want to call them UNC, but I'm going to say UNC, party hacks, who seeing things in a blinkers, and not looking at the bigger picture, and not have no kind of contribution towards the development of this country. We need solutions. We don't need things to sidetrack us at this time. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. Have a good day. Now, I hear you very much, caller. Very, very good points. However, Dr. Mayhew himself made some good points and mentioned everything that you mentioned. But you're right, no solutions. You made a very good point. But you see, that is why we had to tell Dr. Mayhew. We had to tell him straight up, you've made good points. Why not concentrate on this? Why not focus on this? Rather than this position, this stance now about trying to, you're basically trying to distract away from the conversation. You're trying to deflect. Yeah, deflect essentially. So, I mean, I hear you, caller, and I hear you loud and clear. We have a caller on the line with us from Diggle Martin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Phone was all right. Find out about Sean. How is he feeling and so on?
Sean is doing well. He's recuperating nicely. He's getting lots of rest and he's feeling a lot better. And hopefully he will be with us next week, Monday.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. He's a good person and I surely miss him a lot. Not that Canberra is not doing a good job. He's an excellent person as well. I just called to say this is the state of leaders that we have in this country, that the way the country is going. And people look at these two leaders to see the example that they set. And that is what you have to follow and lead by example by. It cannot be right. This country needs a drastic change. It needs somebody with responsibility and integrity and who has values in them. These leaders we are getting, they don't have nothing like that. So I only hope that something that happens, and by God's grace, that we have a change. I thank you for taking my call, and you guys have a good morning and a good job you're doing.
Thank you very much, sir.
And I think the caller is absolutely correct in saying that what this country needs now is somebody who has some form of transformative idea. I'm not speaking about the NTA because I know they have trans in their name, but I'm really speaking about someone fresh, a fresh face, someone that's new. Because what you have with these new parties that are forming is essentially people from old parties who have just decided to take themselves away and form new parties. And that's not what we need at this time. But we do have Shogunas on the line. Shogunas, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Professor.
Yesterday, you totally misunderstood what I said. I never said that land was affordable. In fact, what I said was just the opposite. What you said, accommodation was unaffordable for the majority of the people. And I gave the reason for it.
Actually, Professor, sorry to interrupt you, but I agreed with you yesterday. I think you may have misinterpreted
well, no problem.
Yeah.
I didn't get that from what you said yesterday. Okay, then, well, unless you have any questions.
No, Professor. Do you have any?
No, not
none, Professor. Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good
You're welcome, caller.
No, Professor. I agreed with you yesterday in relation to land, as well as, if I may add, accommodation, both. But to what the caller from Digger Martin stated, and to what you mentioned, as much as we definitely need somebody in Trinidad and Tobago with a more transformative approach, with fresh ideas, with constructive way of thinking. Yes, very much needed. However, and I will elaborate further on my point after because we have a caller, but the people themselves, and I can't stress this enough, I've mentioned it innumerable times on the station, need to change their mindset as well.
Absolutely.
I'll get into that right after this caller from Miaro. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Shah and Pastel.
Good morning.
I want to say special good morning to Sean. He's still here. What I have to say this morning is we have a leader who is Prime Minister who is autocratic. We have a leader who is opposition who is laissez-faire. And we're looking for transformation. And transformation is something that we're asking for, especially when it comes to leadership. And you guys have been highlighting and opening the ears and the minds of the human being that citizens is living in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is something new that we are hearing and seeing. And we are excited to be on the program listening to you. Please keep up the good work because agriculture is suffering on the ground today. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much, caller. And what you were mentioning in relation to an autocratic leader, to a certain extent, I've heard that from people who are very close to the party. And I say to a certain extent because they are not directly in cabinet, but they are working behind the scenes in the party. And I've been told that there is actually a fear of Dr. Keith Rowley within that party. What he says goes, regardless of if you.
I wish anybody could come and contend that on this program.
Of course,
nobody can.
Because I don't think there's any democracy within the cabinet, within his cabinet. There's none. What he says goes.
They probably seem more united, as we always say. The PNM would seem much more united than the UNC, and organized. But
that's why their public relations is somewhat okay. I mean, their PRO makes some very silly statements sometimes, as Laurel is releasing. But in terms of what you're stating, laissez-faire, he is, in a sense, you're right as well.
I agree with the caller.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He does.
For both parties, but the only how I can actually see myself giving the opposition leader some amount of points is whenever she gives a morning show an interview, which will never happen.
Listen, first of all, caller, I think you gave two very good examples of autocratic and laissez-faire. You made some very, very good points, and thank you very much for doing that. In terms of the opposition leader giving an interview, I heard that the opposition leader even struggles to wake up on a morning, right? Whatever the case may be. I hope she's well. But the opposition leader will not give an interview. She has not given an interview because she cannot give an interview. Why? Not because she's incapable of making it to the studio or going on a Zoom call, but the opposition leader does not even write her own speeches, nor can she write her own speeches. If she was to come and have an interview right now, she wouldn't know how to answer the questions. Unfortunately, it seems as though the opposition leader has lost that zest that allows her to actually do these things.
And I can't agree with that, because I was looking at some clippings the other day when Prime Minister's questions was first introduced into our House of Representatives. I think that would have been back in either the end of 2014 or early 2015, when they were still in power. And I looked at how she answered the questions, and based on that, and I looked at the power and the strength that you saw from her to what she is as a leader now, it's totally different. But it's not that I'm saying that she can't do it, and I think that she can do it. But apart from that, the Prime Minister, yes, he may be able to give an interview, and yes, he may be able to speak on the spot, but similarly to Kirkme, who he can't very much deflect.
You see, that's the thing. I don't think the opposition leader can do it. But you see, the opposition leader at one point in time was a very good politician. The opposition leader at one point in time made very good points, stood up and spoke very well. And I think now that that has gone, that is when the opposition leader also needs to understand when, for the betterment of the country, for the betterment of the party, and maybe for your legacy, you step away. They've had the internal election, so I can't really say that now. But I go back, you mentioned the Prime Minister. You say what you want about Dr. Keith Rowley. There are many things that you can say about him. However, I've always noted that if you were to put the opposition leader and the Prime Minister to debate publicly on a platform or interview them side by side on this program, I know that the Prime Minister will blow away the competition. He has that ability, and he's shown it time again.
Yeah. Not that she doesn't have it, but I don't think that she exudes that power that she once had. She doesn't have that energy. And you can look at clips and you'll see it for yourself.
The phone lines are open, folks. The number's on your screen. Call us and join us this morning. Share with us your opinion. I mean, if Kemjul and I are wrong in what we've stated, these are just our opinions. But if you think otherwise, or you'd like to counteract our points, we're very much open to that. You know, call in and share your thoughts and opinions with us. I'd like to go back to what I was stating earlier about the people needing to change their mindsets. We've seen time and time again what this government has given to us, right? This government has, mediocrity isn't even the term that you can associate with this government. It's just been plain poor on a whole. I keep going to my favorite example, an individual who can talk so well, but is so annoying at times, with all due respect, and that is to the Minister of National Security. Why is he there? What role is he playing? Foster Cummings. He does a lot as a member of Parliament for his constituency. We see him on the ground. Correct. Whether or not his entire constituency feels that way, that's one thing. But as a minister, what is he doing in terms of youth and national development? You know, and I can go on, but we have a call on the line with us from Diggle Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi guys, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
Keaton, I just want to add something to the COVID expense, please. I'm not sure if you went into all the details, but at the start of the pandemic, the World Bank approved 20 million US, and then, of course, that's for critical medical supplies and the general strengthening the capacity of the health sector.
Yes.
So that would include staff training, health facilities, and all of that. And according to the Auditor General's report for 2021, so of course that's from October 20 to September 21, the pandemic expenditure was 43 million USD, which would be net 293 million TT dollars, and 10% of that has not been accounted for, i.e. $29.3 million.
Yeah.
Korea also gave us 100,000 US, specifically for PPE that people were saying they never got.
We got money
that
from
was
Japan
not
as well.
accounted for.
Yeah.
Now, this report cited several financial, impropriety in several areas, right? Especially at the regional health centers. There were also no separate accounts for unspent balances, and they gave a complete breakdown. Things like misuse of chairman's funds. And of course, I'm only skimming the surface in this 2 minutes. I haven't even mentioned the millions of donated vaccines and other funding. So when Keith Rowley wakes up one morning and says, yes, I feel like I could give away some money to the health sector today, and I ain't even going to call me or telling him. One has to believe him when he says my favorite quote about, you're so used to lies that you do not know the truth when you hear it. Okay? Thanks. Cool.
Thank you very much, Paula. Have a good day.
And the caller is absolutely correct. And that's what I was alluding to when I said that we receive loans from the various developmental banks that are within the region. Because you yourself would know, as you said, you know it for a fact, that Trinidad and Tobago did receive money to assist in terms of our healthcare fight against COVID-19. But where has that money gone? And I know for a fact the opposition did in fact call on the government to account for the money that they have spent.
Because I have the report here in my hand, and this report actually, again, skims the surface, but we received 2 loans from the World Bank. We received, I think, 2 loans from CAF as well. We received funding from the IDB. You mentioned South Korea. We also received from Japan. So we've...
there was another thing where we received US, I remember, a drawdown. I can't remember the exact name.
Special drawing rights.
Special drawing rights, yes.
We also received money from the European Union, financing from the European Union. So there's a lot. So the Prime Minister was very much misleading. So, caller, you're absolutely right. And you just skimmed the surface. As you mentioned, 2 minutes, but you just skimmed the surface because there's a lot more. So maybe the money that they are pumping into these gratuity payments are money from loans that we received before. The other aspect is, how in the world are we going to pay back for these loans?
Not only that, and that's why when the government is questioned at the Standing Finance Committee every October or September, whenever it is, the Minister of Finance always tries to deflect. You look at the Standing Finance Committee, you are sure to get either no answer from the Minister of Finance, even when it's not his ministry that's being considered, or it's another ministry. He would jump into the argument because he wants to defend the government, and because they clearly cannot account for some of the money that they spent.
Well, Flo actually cut Comedy Central, so I watched the Parliament channel simply because of what you mentioned, the Standing Finance Committee. But it doesn't even have to be the Standing Finance Committee. You look at Parliament on a Friday, it is laughable. I go back to the most recent example. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopi-Schoon, in relation to what the government is doing in terms of inflation. She stood up and gave the definition of inflation and the tenets from an economic standpoint of what inflation is. It has been months and we still haven't heard from her about what the government is doing for inflation, but she made a release after she was questioned in Parliament that in 2 weeks, we're going to give a list. That list has never arrived.
But I do know that the Prime Minister did say back in July, I think probably on the 19th of July, if I'm not mistaken, that the Minister of Finance will list out some of the support measures that they are intending to assist families who are affected by inflation. In September, he said. So
yes, he did mention that.
Yes.
And that is exactly what next week Friday is going to be about.
Okay,
in the spotlights on the economy. Okay. He did mention that since then. So what he said at the meeting in Belmont in relation to the spotlights of economy on September 2nd, that's not new. We knew that was going to happen. I think he just, he affirmed the date, put it that way. Nevertheless, I look forward to next week Friday. That's one way to spend your Friday, but as a journalist and as a television host, I think we don't have much of a choice. But nevertheless, very quickly, whilst we have about 5 minutes left, the point I was making in relation to the ministers and the people, we know what this government has given to us. We know what these ministers have done. We know what they have not done. Where is Kazim Hossain in terms of agriculture? You're making an appearance at the expo, taking photos with the various booths. That doesn't do anything for me.
While the president of the Agricultural Society is saying that he's sent correspondence to you,
exactly,
and they are unable to meet you.
Exactly. He says it on your show. And after all of this, yes, the expo was great. Yes, I like the collaboration. But I hope it actually leads to something. The point I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, we've seen what the opposition have given us, right? People have made the statement. and I say people for more than one, that they will take corruption, because corruption is associated with any government, if they see progress.
Yeah.
Sad, but that is what they will.
That's what they've said, yeah.
Right?
People have said that.
So we'll take corruption if we see progress. We see what the opposition has given us. We see what the government has given us. At the end of the day, you still go to the ballot boxes and cast your vote for that particular... You don't vote for individual, you know. You vote for party. You vote for party. So, a certain extent, a certain degree, you may feel like we don't have any other choice. We feel helpless. But you're at fault as well. And maybe you're right. Maybe if I vote for the right person for my community, at the end of the day, it only matters who the Prime Minister is, because the caller from Yaro said it best. You have an autocratic Prime Minister within the party itself. But then and again, do you want a laissez-faire leader? Do you really want a laissez-faire leader?
What does Trinidad and Tobago actually want?
They want change. But as one of my directors just mentioned, don't expect change if you're not willing to change yourself.
I feel like if our election is in the air based on the conversation.
No, we're not campaigning.
I know.
No, we're not campaigning.
Just saying.
Don't worry, we're not going up for local government. We see this show a bit more valuable than that. Maybe in a couple of years, who knows? Maybe Kemal might form a party and he might ask me to be a part of it. I don't know.
I am good. I am good.
Kemal is not touching that.
Politics has too much. It's too messy. I can't deal with that. Yeah.
But my friend, you see, you can't deal with that because it's messy, but you can change that.
Well, that's one way of looking at it.
You certainly can change that. You know, Sean can change that. I can change that. We can all change that. But as I said, it's really up to the people at the end of the day. Anyway, folks, that's really all the time we have this morning for this show. Thank you very much to all our guests, Mr. Eddie Stewart, as well as Dr. Kirk Mayhew. Thank you very much to all our callers. We all made some very, very good points this morning, and we appreciate your contribution to the national discussion. Thank you very much to our directors. We have Kwesi directing the show this morning, as well as Burke, and of course, sorry, my mistake, Joash. we also have Kemuel, who has been our co-host, and he's been my co-host for the last 2 weeks. I think tomorrow is Kemuel's final day in that particular seat. But Kemuel, you're always welcome to the program. I know you join us on a Tuesday, but never ever be a stranger, because as much as Talking Point has been Sean and Keaton, it's Kemuel's as well.
As I mentioned, Talking Point is my home, so I can't stray from you guys even if I wanted to.
You don't have a choice. we know where you work. Anyway, up next we have Strictly Legal here on WESN, but for now, folks, that's it for Talking Point. I'm Keaton Sean. Remember, as ironic as it is, tell the people,
today is a good day to have a good day.
Today is a good day to have a good day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Hazel?
Parents need to know what they're signing up the children for.
Mommy, Daddy, I just wanted to ask. God, is that you?
You want to do what?
Multiple sclerosis is a chronic inflammatory condition affecting the central nervous system.
Being with someone who has MS, you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have a lot of faith.
It's difficult to diagnose until I was even in Mount Hope Hospital for about 3 weeks.
See, I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden you feel like somebody trying to pound some needles or a nail under your foot. That is so painful.
Unfortunately, there is no cure for MS at this point in time.
MS creeps upon you. So I had one attack, and by 4 years after that, I had